Hello and welcome back to another episode of Agency Automators. Today we're here with Jordan Chu, my amazing co-host who has the coolest haircut in the history of humankind. And more importantly, we're here with Cindy Krum, founder, CEO of Mobile Moxie, which is really, really cool. I saw her speak in February of 2016, I believe, at MozCon Local, and if you didn't speak at that one, I saw you at 2017 speak at MozCon Local.
Who remembers?
I know, it's like time flies, and back then it was like, oh my God, we're seeing apps deep linking in the SERPs, and that blew my mind because in 2016 it was all about like mobile's coming, and when that stuff was happening, then it just blew me away. So Cindy, can you give us, for the folks who don't know who you are and who might be living in a cave, can you give us a little bit of a intro in your bio and tell us a little bit about Mobile Moxie?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Cindy Krum, and I'm the CEO of Mobile Moxie. We're based in Denver, Colorado. We do mobile SEO and ASO consulting and have for now more than 11 years, I guess, for a really long time. We also have a cutting edge mobile SEO and ASO tool set that I'm super excited about. It's getting more and more traction and more like fans. So that's exciting. And what else? I have a famous dog. His name is Barkley.
Yeah.
He has his own Instagram.
Well, maybe much later we could talk pet Instagram, because I took this like the most amazing dog video, and my wife said, "Oh, you gotta like put that on pups or dogs of Instagram," and it got like 0 likes, and I was like, "This is the coolest dog video ever," which was him running along, bouncing this huge balloon up
I
in
saw
the air.
it.
Yeah,
I saw it. I liked it.
it should have been. It should have had major traction. What happened? Okay, so tell us a little bit about your career trajectory. I was checking it out on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh my God, she kind of is like me. She started with web design and web development. And can you tell us a little bit about that trajectory?
Yeah, so I did start with web design because I have a good degree in graphic design and another one in marketing, which is its own story. But
Yeah.
I'll table that one because it's a long one. So I
Okay.
started by building really crappy web pages in Front Page
Okay.
for a very small outfit where I was literally based out of someone's converted attic, and it was somewhat illegal, I think, in terms of. And then they asked me to do SEO before SEO was even called SEO.
Yep.
And so I started reading Jill Whalen's newsletter, and I was like, this is cool, I can do this. And then more and more requests came in for that kind of thing, as well as web design. So I was doing both. Then I switched to a different company, not in an attic. Did I say basement? I meant attic.
Yes.
And then so the thing about mobile is when I switched companies, I got a pretty substantial increase in salary.
Yep.
And that was when smartphones were just becoming affordable for normal people, including 20-somethings. So it was the bump in salary that allowed me to get my first phone where I could search the web. Oh. And they actually, this company hired me when they didn't have enough for me to do. So, and I felt bad earning a better salary and just sitting there doing nothing. So I started doing test searches on my phone and comparing them to desktop searches. And that, the rest is history.
Wow. Okay. So now I'm putting 2 and 2 together. So you were like director of all new media at this company.
No,
the iPhone comes.
Director. I just started young, but I didn't have enough to do, so I assigned myself work because I felt guilty getting good money and not working for it.
Yeah, but iPhone comes out in 2007. Mobile Moxie comes out in 2008, right?
iPhone came out in 2005, I thought. No, you're right. 2006 was the first iPhone. I started doing mobile SEO in 2005, researching it from like Blackberries and what was called an MDA,
Yep.
PDA, mobile, whatever.
Yeah. I had a handspring back then and a handspring trio, and I'll never forget going to a wedding with poor reception during a Red Sox playoffs run and not being able to see if we were winning the game and it taking a minute to download just enough data to get a score. Not even a story. It was like, oh my God, this is like 2 kilobytes of data. Like, why isn't this working? Okay, so
Well, NBA had that old visual diagram of who's on base and stuff like that. I don't know if they still have it, but it was like a really, really rough dot diagram of like, I don't know if they still have that, but I remember it from the early days of the web going, this is cutting edge.
Yeah. Okay, so you've coined a whole ton of terms that are now industry well known and used by everybody. One of my more favorite recent one is Fraggles. Take us through some of the others, and then take us through Fraggles, and that'll lead to other parts of the conversation, I'm sure.
Oh, I don't know about the others. I've definitely coined terms because it's something that I just do when there's not a word for it. I'm like, I'm gonna make up a word and see if people use it. But I can't remember them all. I should make a list, but definitely Fraggles. So Fraggle is a fragment of text plus a handle or a jump link, Fraggle. Fragment handle, Fraggle. And what I noticed, and this was actually at least, I would say 3 years ago, at this point, I noticed more and more jump links coming into the SERP, but then I noticed that some of the jump links weren't labeled as jump links, or they were just, things were showing up in searches and Google was scrolling to a middle part on the page, even if it didn't have a jump link. And so what makes me different from many SEOs is I spend a lot more time actually doing real searches and clicking on things to see what happens. And then wondering like, why would they do this? And why is Google doing this? Or why is this happening? And so that's what I saw, is more and more jump links, but then some mysterious jump links that didn't actually have link text or, handles or anything like that. And so I started thinking about it going, well, am I crazy? Did I really see that? And then I was able to replicate it. And so I started kind of wondering, well, okay, if this is happening, it's not an accident, because making a page scroll when there's no link to scroll to takes effort. And like magic, right? How did they do that? So I started backing into it going, well, why would they do that? If they're doing that, why would they do it? And what I came up with, this was a time when people started talking about no-click searches. It was early in the no-click search discussion, and knowledge graph was getting built out and featured snippets were getting built out. More and more results were getting knowledge graph and or featured snippets. And this was just before or at the same time as people also ask started coming out. And so what I was noticing was that Google has lots of fragments of text that they're lifting from web pages. And they must have in their back end system a way to find and locate these fragments in their brain, in their index, to be able to surface them, right? And so that made sense as, okay, Google cares about the most important fragments of text, and they've found a way to put a locator on it, even if it doesn't have one. And now what we see is more and more fragments coming into everything. So you have knowledge graph, which is usually Wikipedia, but sometimes not, sometimes pulling in other fragments of text. The better way to think about knowledge graph is to think about the non-knowledge graph knowledge graphs, like business knowledge graph and medical knowledge graph, which are formatted differently, but they seem to be essentially the same thing. And they're lifting fragments of text as well and creating carousels. Like if you look at the medical stuff, that's mostly from WebMD, they have all these carousels and like different formatting of stuff that they've lifted and represented in a knowledge graph. And so then I thought about, well, what's broken with SEO that they might be trying to fix? And what it was thin content. Where if you were just building a website for your users, you might put a bunch of text on one page if that's how your users tend to consume things, if you've done tests to prove that they like long pages. But from an SEO perspective, we can't do that because we kind of want to have one major keyword focus per page or one major topic per page. And if you go too broad, then you don't get as many rankings as having thinner content, thinner pages, and slicing and dicing it onto separate URLs. But that's broken because that's changing the way we develop to make it rank rather than to be good for the user. But if Google doesn't have to have one page per topic and can highlight different parts of a page for different topics, then that makes them better at their job. The other thing is that at that same time, that's when Google started pushing hard on PWAs, which is progressive web apps for those of you who don't know, and they started indexing apps better and better. And those are things that don't necessarily have separate URLs. So Google had to get better at finding, like having a really long experience like an app that's all one URL, or potentially all one URL if you haven't done the deep linking, or a PWA that's also an SPA, a single page app. It's all JavaScript on one URL. If Google ever wants to be good at doing that, which they do, then they would focus on being able to parse JavaScript, and they would focus on being able to put on-page locators with text to superimpose URLs where they don't exist.
So you consult, I want to get to tools, but I got a quick, this is making my mind explode. So I do a bunch of content marketing, and I build long form guides primarily in the cycling industry. And so we build out 2,000 to 5,000 word long articles that are super in depth, detailed about a brand. They'll include all kinds of detail. And my strategy's been working towards trying to answer as many facets of a topic as possible. Is that how you're advising all of the like crazy Fortune 5 companies, and I guess there's only 5 of them that you work with?
So what we used to do is we used to say, this page is too long and you have 5 topics here. Let's break it out into 5 pages.
Yeah.
Now we still do that sometimes because that's proven, reliable method. But we also have been testing heavily using H2s as on-page bookmarks or anchors, fragments. And this it's not technically a full-on Fraggle because Google didn't superimpose the link. We actually helped Google out and said, here's this topic of content. But it does seem to help get Fraggle style or fragment style rankings by using H2s that are also a jump link, and then having a quick index at the top. And it doesn't have to be a long vertical list. It can be a horizontal list of like jump to or whatever, old school. But I'll tell you, and even the Googlers, when I've kind of asked or hinted about this, they don't know. Which may be strategic, or maybe fabrication, or it may be just that they don't know, is that I've definitely in analytics in Google Search Console that I have access to seen a main page ranking and the same page with the fragment, the hash URL ranking, and with different traffic or different clicks and impressions and whatever data. So
can I show you an example? And Jordan's going to love this. and
I know
have
exactly
you,
what you're referring to, Noah.
yeah, you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about you, Cindy, for about 5 months since Jordan and I started looking at this exact topic. So car dealership PPC. Jordan is amazing, right? So he's got organic result number one. He doesn't have the featured snippet. Since the last time that I've looked at this page, Jordan, I assume you implemented FAQ schema? Okay.
Yeah, I've modified it a bit, and I was actually testing whether FAQ and the table of contents would trigger. Clearly,
Yeah,
it did.
and what's really neat is it shows you a link to set up a scheduling call right in the FAQ schema.
That's
Like,
slick. Good job.
yeah, so that's pretty
Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone.
But a couple months ago, I was all stoked because when I looked for this search, we had just like site links, which were going to his H2. They were going to his H2 hashes. And I thought that was really neat. I assume that you were testing that H2 strategy specifically to get all those site links, right?
To get, yeah, site links and or like site links all on one page. So Fraggles.
Exactly. And that's how his used to be, where if we go to the page, his table of content.
Noah, if you search franchise marketing,
okay,
that should trigger it.
Okay. So that's a little bit differently. Just franchise marketing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Cindy, as Noah does this, I'm curious, how do you balance between long form content and kind of splicing it into multiple articles that you mentioned before?
It's tough. And like the companies that we work with are a bit different from smaller companies that can be more nimble. They don't always take every recommendation, and they have their own agenda of what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. So if we say break it up into multiple pages or keep it on one page but do H2 jump links, or whatever, I don't usually get to strike the balance. It's usually like I'm told what they're going to do, and I have to be happy about it. So yeah, I don't have a good answer.
Table of contents.
Yeah, beautiful.
Driving the site links.
Beautiful.
And the FAQ schema. Jordan, that's cool. I hadn't seen one of your results triggering the FAQ before. That's pretty cool.
And on mobile, those site links are sometimes, they have little boxes around them, and there's sometimes a carousel, I would bet.
And we had seen that. We had seen that for his result before.
But Noah, let me go back to the Fraggles conversation, because I want to tell you one more thing that I think will help put everything into perspective.
Please do.
So it's only clear in retrospect almost every time. But what Google does when they tell SEOs to do things is that they're really just using us as an army to teach their machine learning systems. So for instance, have we heard about deep links in a long time? No. Why? Number one, PWAs are better. But number two, Google doesn't need them anymore, because the companies that did the deep links that said, here is a URL on web and here is a URI that it matches to in our app, that was enough training data for them to start being better at finding Fraggles.
Oh, okay.
And then reverse that, you can see that historically through time. Google used machine learning from our hreflang tags to learn all the language differences, going, this is the same text in English and Spanish, and we can, now that we know that this is the same text, we're going to use it as mapping data to teach ourselves to be better at all of these languages. Everything that Google wants us to do, it seems like, is yes for our own benefit in the short term, but in the long term, it means they're trying to machine learn it and automate it themselves so that it becomes auxiliary or unnecessary.
So have you done things like adding M tags around something that you want to pop up as a Fraggle, or applying a span around a paragraph or a chunk of text and then applying a class or an ID to it, but not having an anchor link point at it to test if that gets surfaced?
Not extensively. Span, yeah, seems to work. EMs don't, or I haven't tested it with success.
Yeah.
Have you tested it?
No. I mean, I I basically took Jordan's strategy where I saw the site links, and I had been trying to get featured snippets with, depending on the search intent, like H2 tag, 52 words or less, or whatever, just like small, informative, good answers. If it's an ordered list, it's an ordered list to do how-to stuff, etc. But I wanted to get site links, and so I used H2 to try and talk about things that might appear lower on the page, and people also ask, to try and get those answers too. I mean,
Right.
I'm sure that you have great stories to tell about this, but before we go there, initially I was thinking about Fraggles, and when we were talking about this pre-call, it sounded like you had some stuff that you were working on internally or a new tool that you wanted to show off that really focuses on Fraggles. Do you want to take us in?
Yeah, I do, but let me show you one other thing really quickly before
Okay,
we go. Hold on, I'm
got it.
pulling
I
it up
just gave
on
you
my
permission.
computer because it's pretty exciting, at least for me. It's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of crazy. Let's see, how do I get this to be big? It's really random. I'm just gonna have to show you my Facebook page.
Okay.
Let's see if I can make this bigger. Okay, yeah. So someone messaged me earlier this week.
How many monitors do you have? It looks like you have like four of them. Your eyes.
Right now,
Oh, okay.
but they're big.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna share my screen with you. Share screen. This. Okay. Someone messaged me earlier this week and
Holy
said, "Hey,
shit.
Cindy, I love all your writing. I just wanted to let you know I'm getting an SEO tattoo and I've included a Fraggle." So it's down here. Do you see it?
Yeah, totally.
That's great.
And so it's still a work in progress. It's not done yet, but let's see if I can scroll and show you. Yeah, here's what it's gonna look like. That's gonna be the Fraggle sliding in. So that's cool on so many levels. Like, I've influenced one person's life enough that they got a tattoo. That's the only one I know about that's got a tattoo that has anything to do with me. No one to my knowledge has the name Cindy accredited to me on the body. But I do have a Fraggle on this guy's arm. But he has a whole sleeve of SEO stuff. Like, that's also very cool.
Yeah.
So his name's Jan. He's a cool dude.
Nice.
All right. So now tools. Your question was about tools.
Yeah.
Let's pause and ask the important question.
What?
Which one of you is getting an SEO tattoo?
No. I don't have any. Do you do you have tattoos?
I have one tattoo.
Oh.
Is it public?
No.
My dad, when he was in Vietnam, he got his entire platoon to go out drinking one night, and he got all of them to get tattoos, like huge ones across their back, and so they're all done. And my dad's the only guy who didn't get a tattoo, and they're like, "Dennis, where's your tattoo?" He's like, "I'm not getting a fucking tattoo." And then they're like, "You got to." So he got a cherry that's like this big on his butt. So
Cherry.
yeah, the tiniest thing you've ever seen. Super funny. Okay, so wait, you asked a question and I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No. You asked a question and I went off on a tattoo tangent. So you asked about tools.
Yeah.
So we have actually, Mobile Moxie has actually had tools for quite a long time, but we haven't promoted them very actively because they started as things that we just needed internally. And I was like, well, you may as well make them public in case someone finds any value.
Yep.
But we've decided that some of our ideas are good enough that we really should push them as a line of business. And so the two that the SEOs love the best are the Pagescope and the Serperator. So the Pagescope lets you You're giggling? Do you like the
Yeah,
name?
separator reminds me of Phineas and Ferb. Jordan has a new tool too. What did you call yours?
The reviewalyzer.
Ah!
Great minds, Cindy. Great minds.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, and I was thinking, Noah, for your post tool, the Post-O-Matic.
Post-O-Matic. Nice. Nice. Because that's like automatic with WordPress, right?
Yeah, that's what we do is we take the ends of like old words and smack them onto SEO kinds of words.
Post-O-Matic. I like it. Yeah, I'm going to go.
Don't steal it, though. What if I want to make a post tool?
Please don't.
Okay.
Okay, so did you want to show us separator or did you want to show us?
Well, I hadn't planned on doing a demo, but let me tell you about them.
Yeah.
So the Pagescope lets you preview a page and track it over time. So we'll auto screen capture that page. We had a big release last weekend or the weekend before, I can't remember, where we've really changed the interface to make it much easier to see the history over time. So now what happens is you can see all of the different phones with the screenshots in a carousel. And you can scroll them all at the same time with one scroll bar, so you can see what changed on the page. So we've had some going in the old interface for a long time. So for instance, I have a test running on Target's homepage, so I can see, it's basically like a Wayback Machine that you can program. So I can see what Target's homepage has looked like for as long as the test has been running, and I can see what a Target product page has looked like for as long as the tool has been running. So then we also have the ability to we also pull in Search Console data if it's authenticated. So we can correlate, did this design look good and work in terms of SEO or no? And what's cool about the Pagescope that most people don't realize is it works on any kind of page. So it can be a page on your website, but since GMB links have static links now, and Knowledge Graph has static links, the KGID blah, blah, blah shortener URLs and the g.co shortener URLs, those are static links. So you can pop those in and track your Knowledge Graph to watch how it changes, or track your GMB to watch how it changes. So what's nice with the GMB is like you can, sometimes when you make changes in your GMB, they don't always go live immediately, or they get bungled somehow, or whatever, or Google decides you're closed when you're not. So our tool, you can set it up for daily, weekly, or monthly. If you had it daily, you could know exactly when Google decided that you were closed against your will. And so you could know how did that, if you have the data, you could say, how did that impact foot traffic, or how did that impact, interactions in the GMB, or whatever. Or GMB, they change the organization of the page sometimes, or they add in different reviews or different quotes or whatever. And so you can see when that went live.
Wow. I got a great Moz presentation for you.
Oh yeah, what is it?
Build a fake business, launch a website, build all your citations, Pagescope all your citations, and then test hour changes on each of the citations and see which ones push to GMB. Yeah, because I had that happen to me and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out where the hours changes were coming from. And what was pushed inside the knowledge graph on the right of SERPs. And I couldn't figure out, it wasn't GMB, it wasn't Facebook, it wasn't Yelp. And I just, at that point, I was like, I'm not going to go too deep down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, so that would be fun. I mean, that's a great use for the tool. Now, so that's what's launched last weekend is a much better UX for the ability to scroll and see. But the other part of the Pagescope that we're redoing right now is the ability to, we parse the entire page and we show the executed and unexecuted JavaScript. We've done that for a while. And we also show you the head tag and the schema and whatever. But we're now going to make it easier to see when did that change, because we do it every single time. And so we'll know that, did anything in the schema change? There'll be a notation, and then it'll be a percent change in the page. So if something, like, it's great for landing pages, like if you totally changed your landing page, the percent is going to be like 1,000% change. But if it's just like, 1 or 2% change, then maybe it's nothing, don't worry about it. But that allows you, because we have big enough clients that even the SEO team doesn't know when changes are going live.
Wow.
And so we need to backtrack where we're like, we lost traffic to all the product pages. What happened and when? And like the traffic loss happened here. So let's go back into Pagescope and see, did something in the code change? And if so, what was it? And we have a diff checker that shows you the before and after. The diff is difference checker, so it shows you before and after.
Yep.
Well, right now the difference checker shows you actually with JavaScript, without. We're going to get the diff checker to do this date versus this date.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's super exciting for landing pages. Also potentially useful for knowledge graph or GMB. But that's that. And then the other tool is the same idea, but it's the SERPerator. And all that's meant to do is check SERPs. But what's cool about that is you can do the same thing and see all the phones side by side and scroll. So you can see, like, where is the first organic result, right? Mm-hmm. And stuff like that. And so you can see, okay, so we got more ads on this day, and ads kind of mess everything up. But let's say more knowledge graph, or the knowledge graph got a different section on this day. Mm-hmm. And so you can say, okay, so we got pushed down 30 pixels more or 100 pixels more because of this new knowledge graph or because of this new featured snippet. And then you can track that pixel height kind of thing to traffic or clicks, right? Because that one also pulls in Search Console.
Are you, so two questions, because I've had some issues with API stuff, and I'm wondering if you solve this problem. So are you able to work with Search Console domains or just properties?
I've been here. I know the problem. So what is the answer to the question, though?
Sorry.
I think both.
Okay. And then...
because... And I think that what you're experiencing, my guess is what you're experiencing is people who are logged into too many Search Console accounts or too many Google accounts at once, and then they can't authenticate or they can't keep an authentication. Is that what you're experiencing?
Well, like, you can't verify ownership. There's permission stuff with the API that when you're trying to connect to domain properties, it's handled differently. And then the other question that I had for you with your SERPerator is, are you parsing the SERPs or just taking pictures? And if you're parsing, can you export the parse in like a JSON, i.e., do you have an API that I can use to replace something like SERP API?
So, good question. Yes, we will. It's not ready yet. It's not launched. We're launching the parsing of the SERP probably in about 2 weeks.
Cool.
But what's cool about the parsing of the SERP is it does the whole SERP, including ads, including knowledge graph, including all the stuff that I feel like Google tries to tell us that it's not important. Like, don't worry about paid, it's not SEO, don't worry about it. Don't worry about knowledge graph, it's not SEO, don't worry about it. But it's taking clicks and it's taking eyeballs, and I'm worried about it.
Right.
So we parse everything, including that stuff. We parse it over time, and we do basically the diff checker, the percent change over time. We do a whole percent change and a position change, and we do everything, including like hotels results. People also ask interesting finds, and we can tell you, like, today interesting finds was in position 3, but yesterday it was in position 2 or whatever, which a lot of the tools ignore interesting finds. And so we parse everything and we tell you what that looks like. We're gonna have an export, but it's not in the next release that's coming up.
Got it.
But I want to. What we have instead of an API is a Google Sheets integration.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever tests you have set up in the Pagescope or the Serperator, you can export to Sheets.
Cool.
And so let's say you have a keyword and a phone. Let's say you have 20 keywords. You can export all of that with all the same settings in the Serperator to Google Sheets, and then it just gives you all of the test data, like what you're testing, and a link that you can click, and it automatically brings up what that SERP looks like live right now. And then in the long run, the hope is to be, this is what it looks like live right now, and this is what it looks like historically over time. So again, it's like having the Wayback Machine for a SERP, which, like, who hasn't wished at some point that they had that?
Totally. I think that's super powerful, because I think it was last MozCon, Will Reynolds was saying how seasonality just impacts the intent and the content of a SERP. And if you see a huge drop in traffic, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you're actually able to attribute, hey, the intent of this keyword or the intent of this, cluster of keywords have actually changed. That's really interesting.
Yeah, totally. So we'll be parsing all that. We show you the side-by-side comparison. We let you compare dates. We're exporting videos of the scrolling SERP, so you can save it as an MP4 and put it in your presentations or your PowerPoint or whatever.
Cool.
And we're super excited about it. We're beefing up our intake process, where we give you ideas about what you should be tracking, and it's all like keyword and country and language focused, more so than what some other SEOs focus on, because what we found is, number one, we tested our search results. They're real search results. Google thinks we're phones. And we've paid people all around the world and we're like, what phone do you have? Okay, do this search from this location with this language setting and compare it to what we've got and tell us if there's a difference. And it's always the same except for ads, which of course they vary. Right. So we've tested like crazy to make sure that we're accurate. But what some people don't realize, and I've done a whole presentation on this to kind of raise awareness, is that you can be standing with the same phone in the same spot, but if your language setting, your default language on your phone is different, that will impact both phone and desktop results. So like, let's say, and even if the keyword is the same, so let's say I'm standing in the same spot and I have two phones, one with the default language of English and one if the default language is Spanish. Whatever keyword I search for, whether it's in English or in Spanish, if I search for it the same, like I search for the English keyword on both phones or I search for the Spanish keyword on both phones, it's going to mess with the rankings. It can change the order of the rankings, what's included, whether there's a knowledge graph, whether there's a featured snippet, what's in the featured snippet. All of that can change just by default language settings. Important for if you're targeting immigrant communities, important if you're in countries other than the US where they have a lot more official languages, because people set their default language and then they forget. And they'll search interchangeably in whatever languages they speak, but they're not changing their language settings. So in places like Switzerland, there's, a pretty even split between whether people are searching in German, French, or Italian. Not super even, but somewhat. It's distributed. But they all speak a little bit of each, or most people speak a little bit of multiple languages at least, and they'll search interchangeably. So you might think you're killing it if you're only tracking a keyword in the language that the keyword is written in. But if people are likely to be searching for a keyword where the keyword language doesn't match, then you should be tracking those as well. And then same thing with featured snippets, even without language, just by country, featured snippets change.
Yep.
Even if the rankings stay the same.
Huh.
So that's all amazing. I have to give you props, by the way. I signed up for a trial recently, and your toolkit has by far the slickest setup process of any software tool I've ever signed up for. And I know I gave you props on that on Twitter yesterday, but when you sign up for Mobile Moxie and you use a Google, it gives you choices. It's like Google, maybe Microsoft, and then maybe email, password. And with the Google sign up process, you click your face, you click submit, and then it emails you the subscription link. You click it, and you're automatically in the tool. I was like, oh my God, that's so sick. And I cackled out loud, and I immediately messaged Jordan. We were in a meeting together talking, and I was like, like cackling because it was so cool. Okay, so tell us, this is an agency automators hangout, and we generally focus tons on automation. So how do you approach process inside your consultancy, and how do you think about, do I automate something, do I not? And walk us through maybe one of your processes that you decided to do manually, or a process that you then push through into an automation, and what lessons you learned. Sorry, that was like a 6-part question. Sorry.
So we built the tools out of kind of a need to automate, or at least make things easier. Yeah. But the goal has always been to automate. And what I like to think about our tools, I mean, obviously everyone thinks about their baby as better and special and different. Yeah. But I think of our tools as more of a support for any other SEO tools that you might use. It's not meant to replace anything. That's why we did the Google Sheets export, is like, we want to be able to let you work with data that you already have. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. But we do want to automate CYA. And so, like I told you, with big clients, sometimes even the SEO team doesn't know when changes go live. And we actually experience this on the ASO side much worse. So Aso Algorithms, for those who don't know, ASO stands for app SEO, basically, app search optimization. The Aso algorithms are much less forgiving. So if you happen to delete, let's say, a short description or a keyword tag in one of the stores, your app rankings just fall off a cliff. They're gone. Wow. And then you put it back and they come right back. And we had a team that just kept deleting that thing. Like, they just kept, not us, because we don't even always get access to the app store listings. We just kind of tell people what to do there. But they just kept deleting it for some reason. And so they would go like this. And so we built a tool that would capture whenever the app metadata changed and put an asterisk on a chart. And send us an email where it's like, oh, you deleted your thing again, go put it back. And this was for them a lot of money when they fell off a cliff. But yeah. So same thing with that's kind of the goal with the Pagescope and the Serperator, is we want to capture what we can if we know something changed, and we want to let you kind of help SEOs go, well, we know this happened here because we can see it, instead of just wondering. Because, like, if you think about how many times people go on Twitter and ask Barry Schwartz, hey, is this new? I'm building a whole PowerPoint deck about Barry Schwartz and is this new? Because he must get tired of answering questions like that. Every day. The reason people care if it's new is because it's impacting their ability to get clicks, either positively or negatively, right? Either this helps them or hurts them, but they need to be able, if they're an agency, to show it to a client and be like, hey, look, we did this and it worked. Or, hey, look, our competitor did this and it's working for them. And this is probably where all our clicks went. Like, if you're an SEO and your clicks fall off or your traffic falls off and you have an angry boss or client going, where'd the traffic go? And you're like, that's not good. That's not enough. Yeah. And so what happened is more and more things were going to no-click searches, or more and more things were going to searches that didn't click over to your site, even if it was your stuff, GMB, knowledge graph that's you, that's all good, but no one's getting credit for that. So the other fun thing about the Serperator is that we have a same as schema kind of setup. It's not really schema, but we let you claim stuff that's you. And so you can say on this brand search, this is our knowledge graph, this is our map pack, and then we give you a score that we're still trying to name. Right now, the running name is the Successometer. And it's
the
kind of like, the what?
The Rankerator?
The Rankerator? Maybe. But it's not rank. It's success, because it's like a signal versus noise ratio, where it's like, there's a lot of noise here, but we are a lot of signal in that noise. This is us, this is us, this is us, this is us, right? And so what happens is when we parse the page, we give you a tick box where you can say, this is us, this is us, this is us. And then we archive that to your profile, where whenever that URL shows up in a Serperator result ever again or previously, we can reparse it.
Oh, wow.
And say, this is you, and you should get credit. Because SEO, I don't think it's fair to anymore to consider SEO just blue link optimization. There's a lot of other stuff. Think about the free product listings. If you're there, you want to get credit.
Yeah. Do you, how do you deal with alerting and notification to track progress? Does Serperator, do your tools have Slack integrations?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's in the pipeline.
Okay.
But yeah, we have to get the stuff like working and happy before we do the Slack integrations.
Or webhooks too. That would be really baller too.
Well, webhooks are great because they work on everything, right? You build the webhook once. Yeah. So webhooks is probably the answer.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet. What most people don't realize is Mobile Moxie is incredibly small. We have, including me, 3 full-time employees.
Nice.
Not including me, 2 full-time employees.
Yeah.
That's how that math works.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so have you had any automations that you built other than your tools that broke? We love hearing about failures. It falls into the one of my favorite words ever, Schadenfreude category. Do you know what that stands for? Or what that means?
I used to know. It's German, and it means like
taking pleasure in other people's.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'll tell you about an automation that I'm building right now that is currently broken.
Oh, ooh. I'll share mine. I'll share my app store, my G Suite marketplace after.
Yes, this is a good story.
Yeah.
I like your story is more interesting than mine, but I think that, my story relates to what we were talking about earlier with the authentication and the Google, just gets confused. Like, I have many Google accounts, and unfortunately clients and whatever are spread across all of them. And so they're often open in multiple tabs. And so we've had issues with our own tools authenticating to Google, because especially for me, I'm always last in line. My version of my tool never works for me, but it works for everyone else. But I'm logged into so many Google accounts. So what happens is, if you're logged into too many Google accounts, or at least I think we fixed it, but if you're logged into too many Google accounts, you lose authentication when you log out of your Google account in the Mobile Moxie tools. If you're not logged into the right Google account, the GSC data goes away. We're trying to fix that.
Yep.
But the other automation that I've been building is we're trying to do a better job of promoting the tools and making sure that everyone knows that they exist. Because honestly, I work so hard on this, and then people are like, "Oh, you have tools?" And I'm just like, "Yes." It breaks my heart. So I'm like, I've got to really do a better job of just creating the idea that we have tools. And so we're since Twitter is so big with SEOs right now, we're looking at beefing up our branded Twitter account to just constantly show how-to tutorials, videos. And we've also done a lot with our own internal webinars and stuff like that with video, and we want to make sure those are getting views. So I built a spreadsheet to kind of automate, to use an automation tool. So we use Meet Edgar for our social. But the problem is, so they have this nice ability to upload a CSV of tweets and schedules and whatever. So you can put all your tweets in a spreadsheet, then upload it, and it chooses when to send them out. I've definitely messed that up before. But also, like, I just run out of tweets because we try and tweet a little bit in every time zone because our tools are very international oriented.
Yep.
And I just don't have time to like keep feeding Meet Edgar more tweets. So I created a tweet writing tool because with this is a secret. I know that people are going to be like, Cindy. It does. So all it does is it writes the tweets and then I upload them to Meet Edgar. Because you can only use a tweet once in Meet Edgar. You can never reuse it.
Yeah.
So I created different beginnings, endings, and one other thing. And then the meat of the tweet stays the same. So it's like, FYI, did you know, ICMY? And then it's like, check it out, da 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 da. And then it's got the link and the video and the body of whatever it is I'm trying to explain.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I was like, you know, it's really only looking for 1 or 2 character differences. So then I took that, and that was like 50 tweets, and then I added, shouldn't be telling you this, then I added different emojis at the end, so I can turn one tweet into basically 1,000 tweets, so I never have to meet Edgar again for this one asset, right?
Yeah.
And so this is what I want to do, is I want to Meet Edgar to never not have something to tweet out for webinars or for how-to tutorials or whatever.
Yeah.
So it'll just seed it. And I don't want people to get annoyed or whatever. So we're going to do this for like all of our assets, which is many. So we're going to stack up Meet Edgar with thousands of tweets, but that's just because I never want to touch it again. Like I've got better things to do. So
Yeah.
I want it to be fully stocked for like almost a year. Tweeting only two or three times a day. It's not like it's like spammy. I don't know. Do you think that's spam? Tell me. A little spammy.
Well,
but
it's a little, but at the same time, like, I don't, the way people use Twitter is very personal. Like, I don't, how do you do it? I go straight to my notifications tab.
yeah,
It's not like I'm a rock star.
So that's the other thing, is that's all for the Mobile Moxie Twitter account. I would do stuff like that to a much lesser degree on my personal account.
Yeah.
And I'm going to watch it really closely to see if people get annoyed with that Twitter account. But really, tweeting 3 times a day or 2 times a day, and it's interspersed with people in the Mobile Moxie Twitter account actually retweeting and engaging.
Yep.
So I feel like that's okay, but it's definitely a gray area where I'm like, I'm just going to do this, see how it feels, see if I like it, see if it's trading off with positive traffic. Because that's the other thing, is my automator automates the beginning, it does UTMs for the beginning and the ending of the tweet. So it's like, people seem to like these tweets that start with FYI. Or people seem to like the call to action, check it out, more than they like the other calls to action. So those
Jump in. That's Jordan's favorite, right?
jump in. Oh, now there'll be 30 more tweets.
Huh. That's amazing. Okay, so it wasn't an automation that went wrong, but it was do you want me to share mine? My App Store nightmare?
Yes.
My G Suite Marketplace. So we had an add-on. We launched it. There were a couple bugs. We worked through the bugs. I wanted to make it multilingual, so I made it multilingual. We then encountered a multilingual related bug. I was testing it in Spanish. I changed my Google language settings. I think I was logged into an incognito tab and a normal tab. I think I changed the settings in one, but not the other, right? So I was testing it. Everything looked great. I went to update the listing, which means you have to make 2 changes. You have to make a change on the configuration tab, and you have to make a change on the store version tab, I think it's called, or the in the store tab. I forget what it's called, but basically one allows you to change the configuration, one publishes it. In the 2 to 3 hours that I was testing it, in the middle of that process, Google changed the cloud console user experience. They changed the tab layout and they changed the quantity of buttons on the in your store tab. So I logged into Google Cloud and it was in Spanish. I then went and changed my language settings, and it's about 10:30 at night and I'm a little tired. I changed my language settings, probably in that incognito versus normal tab scenario. I went back to Cloud Console, refreshed the page. It was still in Spanish. I then opened up DevTools and did a, like hard reload and empty cache so that it would then pick up my new language settings, so it would be back in English. And it didn't work. It was still in Spanish. And it looked different. So I was like, oh, it's no big deal. I could do this. I don't know Spanish, but I know enough. So I fixed the configuration tab. No problem. I went to the in your store, and at the bottom, there were 3 buttons instead of 2. And I was like, oh, shit. That's no big deal. I'll just copy the button text and then search what that means, if that's save or publish or whatever. And instead of copying it, I think I deleted the add-on. So the add-on's like not available in the marketplace. And that's what happened. Yeah, it was awful. It's really bad. And
but you know what?
what?
If you worked for someone else, it would be worse. At least the only person mad at you is you.
Well, you know what? I work at 2 Octobers for Chris and Nico. And
Are they mad?
they're amazing. I mean, honestly, I feel so incredibly blessed. They want us to make mistakes so that we can incorporate the learnings into our processes. And as long as, and the impact was pretty small. Like the user base isn't enormous, so it's like it's a super bummer. But at the same time, it's kind of beyond my control when you're dealing with the verification process. There's not a lot you can do to accelerate it. I mean, Google works at their own pace.
Sure. We deal with that in apps as well.
Yeah. So give us a little bit of insight into app SEO. Like, I haven't touched that at all. Like, is it super hard? Do you feel like you have your head wrapped around the algorithms? Does each marketplace has its own algorithm? Is it just using keywords and descriptions? And I mean, like,
yeah, it's like SEO in 1995.
okay.
So there's still a keyword tag in the iOS App Store.
Yep.
There's not a keyword tag in Google Play, but the keyword tag is weighted pretty heavily in Apple. And it's the same thing, like, don't do commas and spaces because that wastes character. Do keyword, comma, keyword, comma, keyword. Yeah, it's so 1995. But you have character count limits, and so that's the big thing that you have to optimize for, is like, how do we say what we are in a way that fits our brand image and brand guidelines and is keyword rich, and within pretty strict incredibly strict character limits. It just won't be accepted if it's over the limits. It's not that it's not like Google where they let you in and that they ignore it. It just won't be accepted. So there's that. And then, so we break ASO down into 2 kinds of ranking signals: static ranking signals, which is like basically your app metadata,
Yep.
and dynamic ranking signals. And this is like star ratings, reviews, and tech scores. So do you have is it a crashy app or is it not a crashy app? Does it have fast load time, stuff like that? Those things kind of change within one release. And it can like get crashy, And so those things are dynamic. They change over time. And then there's static. Static, super easy to control, super 1995. Dynamic is harder, and it takes a bit more creativity, because there are different things in the algorithms where, for instance, the algorithm is more sensitive right after a launch or an update. And things like download volume and velocity are a ranking factor, and paid is a ranking factor because it creates download volume and velocity. So you can influence organic ASO ranking by driving paid. And so we do things like coach people to have a strong launch supported with lots of paid and email, because it drives download velocity, and that download velocity score in the algorithm will carry you even when you've shut off the budgets in the email. Because it looks like pent up demand, right? If I tell you Mobile Moxie is launching an app, and if I were like, let's say I'm amazing, I'm Uber, or not Uber, I'm someone better than Uber. And I've done loads of marketing going, this new app is gonna change your life for 6 months. And then we launch, and all of those people that signed up for a reminder when we launch download it immediately. Google sees that in the algorithm. Both stores see that in the algorithm and going, this is pent up demand. People really wanted this app. We need to rank it high.
So they don't see that as a spam signal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just a fun, different thing. And there are 3 algorithms to deal with there. There is the iOS Apple algorithm, there's the Android Google Play algorithm, and there is the Google App Pack algorithm, which is different from both. So you can rank in, for one keyword, you can rank in position 3 for iOS, position 1 for Google Play, and 52nd in the app packs.
So you've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world, and you've worked in tons of different verticals. You worked with HBO, is that right? I got that set?
MTV for many years.
Okay. You worked with, I'm hearing Target.
Can neither confirm or deny.
And,
Most of them I can't talk about. That's
okay, then I won't go there. But what you have, okay, so I didn't even want to get names. I wasn't even fishing for names. So let's do that question again. So you've worked with a ton of different verticals, and you've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. What are your dream verticals? Like, you've done e-com, you've done media, like.
We tend to specialize in highly regulated industries.
Okay.
Because there's more tech difficulty, and we are a very technical team. We're not developers, so we do a lot of this and not a lot of this. Yeah. But we're trained in spotting the problem and telling developers what it needs to change to, or, for instance, and it's really the thrill of the game. So it's not that I love highly regulated industries, but I do love a good challenge. And so, for instance, we worked for a long time in children's TV with one of the major children's TV networks. Yep. Children's TV, there are COPPA requirements about what you can and can't advertise to kids. And we had to show warnings. And this was before Google got really great at redirects. So, like, if you came in on an ad, you got one experience. And if you came in organically, you actually still had to get this, like, warning and whatever, and that messed up SEO, right? Or we would have to, the minute you clicked on something that was advertorial, you had to go to a middle page that's like a warning, and so it messed up all the internal linking structure or whatever. So stuff like that. I'm trying to think other really technical challenges. Lots of heavy JavaScript, lots of migrations. We created a process that we loved, actually. Back in the day when companies were going from having a desktop and a mobile site to going responsive, we actually created a migration process that allowed companies to go responsive and launch responsive on the MDOT, and then use it on desktop as well once it tested well on mobile, without doing too many redirects, right? Like, it was a minimal redirect, because migrations can get really hairy when you have mobile and non-mobile, and especially when you're using, like, they were back in the day, user agent detection and redirection was the big thing, and that would mess up bots.
Yep.
So yeah, just anything that's super technical and not straightforward. Although now, like, I've been doing this long enough, I'm getting old. I'm wondering if I should go for easier projects.
So we had a great conversation with David Crevitt from Coding is for Losers, and his thing was, I only sell off the menu.
Yeah, that's very much like us. But I've been
Yeah.
rethinking that recently. Like, maybe I should just like be middle of the road. But then I might lose my fun edge and not have people do tattoos of.
What's so my knowledge of Mobile Moxie initially, I had always thought of you as a tool company and as someone who loves speaking internationally. And then over time, I learned that you were doing a consultancy. Is it, are you mainly a consultancy and then everything else is ancillary? Is that how you think about it? Or how do you?
We are, so right now the consultancy funds the tool development, but I want to kind of switch that
Yep.
model. And so that's why, for instance, we're doing all these updates to our tools and getting the ability to do things like you want, which is export JSON LD and create APIs. Because like I said, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. My long-term goal, as I've expressed it to my team many times, is we don't want to replace any of the existing tools. We want to work with them because most of them are not ready for mobile first indexing. Still 2 or 3 years in,
Oh my
they're
goodness.
still focusing on desktop data.
Yeah.
And actually, so that's one of the main things that I didn't mention in our updates. Is one of the main updates is we've started doing desktop, the same thing for desktop that we do for mobile, because so like the tool companies can't wrap their brains around only having mobile. So we're like, screw it, do desktop too. And so now we also are going to have a comparison score between mobile and desktop. So for instance, we'll do a Serperator run and we'll show you on a mobile phone, but we'll tell you how different is it from desktop.
Mm.
And we'll have APIs for all of this so that, or at least plugins, so that, and the plugins are working right now actually, so that any tool company can put a little phone icon to see what does this search result look like now. And if they use the full API, we can record the history for them. Because like, I think Moz Local could use this. I think SEMrush could use this. I think Bright Local, any of them, they're not doing a great job of representing what a live search result looks like. Because most of them, if they're doing that at all, they're using an API that Google has available that we stopped using because it wasn't accurate.
So what are you researching and what are you, we're getting close, aren't we, time-wise, Jordan? I hate to take too much of your time, Cindy. What are you researching and pumped about that you can talk about?
I'm pumped about all our releases, obviously. Let's see, the next, well, I'm really excited actually about that last presentation that I did that you mentioned watching.
Oh,
It's got
yeah.
beautiful vistas of like,
Yeah.
It's based on the book called Range, which is all about the value of the comparative values of being a specialist versus a generalist. And the theme of the talk, or kind of the takeaway, is SEO like an amateur. And what I try to do is show people how I see things that other people aren't seeing. Like, and when I say SEO like an amateur, what I mean is I feel like SEOs have built up like very strict rules in their brain about what isn't SEO. And I think that is not useful for understanding what real business owners care about. But I think it's also in the long term going to be detrimental because, like, for instance, we mentioned the, what are they calling them? I call them product knowledge graph, but it's the new free merchant center feed, free PLAs.
Yep.
That's feed based, and it used to be part of straight up PPC, but now there's a free organic quote unquote version. Is that SEO or not? And the SEOs were like, not my job. I think that's going to be hurtful. And I think more and more things are what we call hosted inclusions, which is Google lifting your stuff into their world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more and more like basically if you could just hand your website to Google in a JSON LD format, they would prefer that to anything else. They just want to lift your stuff. And so you can either make it easy or hard. And this is definitely polarizing in an SEO conversation, but the marketplace product listing is, as I recall, it's an XML file that you just upload. And I think you can optimize that. PPC people are already optimizing that. And SEOs are going to have to get in on that game because blue links are getting pushed further and further. And I think of everything that's not a blue link is kind of like business class. Yeah. And everything that's a blue link is kind of coach.
Two things. So I'm going to go David Epstein, or however you say his name perfectly, on you for just a second and synthesize a little bit of information that you were sharing. Okay, so you were saying earlier, I forget if it was in pre-call or earlier in this call, that Google has all of these best practices for what they want us to do, which is a way for them to train their AI or their machine learning, right? And to fix their algorithm. We also know that Google hates the feed, the product feed solution, because it makes them rely on feeds which break and all this type of stuff. They're also starting to parse through product detail pages, and they're getting details from that. And I've had issues in my own feed where they're telling me that the feed is going to get disapproved because of product data that's wrong on the page that doesn't match the feed. And I'll go look at the page, and their notification is actually wrong. So what do you think of this?
You're so smart. I hadn't put that together yet, but you're so smart. They're trying to train their ML to create product knowledge graph.
Yeah, so that they're getting access to every single built with, they're getting access to every e-commerce platform to learn how they build out every single type of product detail page so that they can build all the logic around scraping it so that we won't have to give them feeds.
Yes, you're so smart. I hadn't thought of that, but that's exactly it.
Okay.
Maybe I thought of it and I forgot it, but I think you should take credit for it.
Okay, that's fine. I'll give it a name.
It's all you.
I'm going to give it a new name and I'll get famous.
What is it? What's the name? Hurry.
I don't know. I'll tweet you later today. It'll take me a little time.
You have to have a name for what needs a name is the difference between feed and product page. It's like feed landing page misfit or something like that.
Yeah. Cool. So we covered a ton. What did we miss?
I don't know.
What do you want us to take away from this? What do you want our audience to think about? What's that?
I feel like I talked too much.
No, you did. It was amazing.
If it was Lord of the Flies, I was hogging the conch. This is what I used to get accused of. My ex-boyfriend used to tell me I was hogging the conch, which was like you had to have the conch in Lord of the Flies to be able to talk.
Someone once asked me, what's your favorite thing? And I think I said, I like to, and this is like when you're like super unfiltered and you say the things that are true that you wish you never shared with people. I think I said, I like to talk at people. And I meant with, but I said at, and I was like, okay, so this was amazing.
This stuff. I find this exciting.
Yeah.
And I am actually really excited about what I think our tools can do for the industry, because I'm really, if that were even if you don't use my tools, what I want you to take away is that the tools that you're using might be doing a disservice, at least as it compares to looking at real results. There's huge benefit in looking at real results. And whether you use my tool or use your own phone is kind of you can't change location or be anywhere in the world with that one. That's one of the nice things is our tools are great for international SEO, which we do a lot of. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just know that the regular tools, you can't specify location. And like, if you're just doing one country at a time, like when you're like, I'm doing SEO for the US, They pick the centroid, and like for the US, that's Kansas. It's not helpful.
Yep.
I mean, Denver wouldn't even be that much more helpful unless you're actually a company that's in Denver, but Kansas certainly isn't, as far as like, yeah. And most of the SEO tools aren't even transparent about what if we found out, and I'm sure they're not, but what if we found out that the default language setting in SEMrush was Russian? Even though it's showing, because the queries we put in are English, it's showing English results, but it's all tweaked. Like, but the tools in general, they're approximations of what's happening, but sometimes it's nice to know exactly what's happening.
This was amazing. We really appreciate it. I hope to see you at SEO Beers soon in real life. I don't really drink beer, but I love SEO beers because I get to just run the mouth at people. And you've been a witness. You've seen it happen. And I wish I could see you live at MozCon, but I'll be seeing you on live, in like the Zoom world.
I'm actually not speaking there this year.
Oh,
unless you're telling me something I should know.
well, I think Jordan and I are going to host a Birds of a Feather, which is like, yay, we get a Birds of a Feather Zoom room. I'm pretty excited about it. It should be fun. This is great. Jordan, do you have anything that you want folks to think about?
Not
other
that
than
I
the fact that you're like getting married soon?
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It's been fun trying to navigate the way with COVID going on, but very exciting stuff.
Excellent. Okay, so this has been another episode of Agency Automators. We hate to leave, but that time has come. Jordan, thank you. Cindy, you're amazing. Thanks for taking so much of your time. Everybody, peace out. Have a great day.